Hi. In this unit, we're going to coordinate the smart demand choices of consumers, those would be the grasping hands, with the smart supply choices of businesses, the hands supplying the apple. That coordination through markets is actually a bit of a miracle. You're going to learn what a market is and how it is that markets ensure that all of us get the products and services that we want, where and when we want them. Comparative statics is a way of thinking where you isolate the effect of one change at a time. In the real world, many things change altogether, and we can still use comparative statics to try and simplify a situation where many things change to a reduced number of things changing. Maybe not one, but we can certainly deal with two. So I want to give you an example of using comparative statics when there's an increase in both demand and supply, and that you can see in the following graph. What you will see in the graph is that we can predict a change in the equilibrium price, but not also the equilibrium quantity. It's going to be one or the other. And without information about the relative size of the shifts of the demand and supply curves, we cannot accurately predict the other equilibrium outcome. And one of the elements of wisdom is knowing what you don't know, and this technique has its limitations, which you will see as I go through the increase in demand and increase in supply in the following graph. Figure 4.6a shows what will happen if there's an increase in both demand and supply. And the outcome when both demand and supply shift in this case is not as clear-cut as it was in the simpler cases of a single shift in demand or a single shift in supply. So here we have an initial equilibrium at the intersection of D0 and S0. This is the equilibrium price, P0. This is the equilibrium quantity, Q0. So let's first model the increase in demand. So that's a rightward shift of the demand curve from D0 to D1. Then let's add to that an increase in supply, a rightward shift of the supply curve from S0 to S1. So if we look at the new equilibrium at the intersection of D1 and S1, it's right here. Now the way I've drawn these shifts of the curves, the price is exactly the same as it was originally. But if I had drawn the demand curve shifting out a little bit more, or the supply curve shifting out a little bit more, the price might have been higher, the price might have been lower. We simply don't have enough information to know what will happen to the equilibrium price. On the other hand, no matter how you draw the distance of the rightward shifted demand curve and the rightward shifted supply curve, there is no question that the equilibrium quantity will increase, in this case from Q0 to Q1. So what's the net of effect of an increase in both demand and supply? There's an ambiguous effect on the equilibrium price. We can't tell whether it increases, whether it rises, whether it falls, whether it remains the same, but we can say for sure that there will be an increase in the equilibrium quantity. So an increase in demand and an increase in supply is one of the many combinations of changes in demand and changes in supply. I'm not going to take you through all of them. You can see them up here on the slide, but I do suggest you have a look at these both in the textbook and also in the narrated dynamic graphs, which are in the multimedia resources for Micro Chapter 4. And you can see that in all of these cases, one of the variables is predictable, the change in direction of one of the variables, but the other one is not. It depends on the magnitude of the shift, how far the demand or supply curve changes, and we can't say anything about that other variable. But still, the prediction of the change in one variable can still be very helpful in understanding what's going on or what's about to go on in the real world. This table, effects of changes in demand or supply, is a really good study device. If it's the night before a test and you need to know, all right, what are the impacts of changes in the 5 demand variables, changes in the 6 supply variables, and then combinations, this is the place to go to. It's a very compact way of summarizing all of the comparative static results that we've been looking at. If you get a good understanding of what's here, you're going to be in a really good position in terms of understanding what comparative statics is all about and what you need to know to be able to think like an economist.